Mai, ahi ahi Māori. Right, let's start with a karakia, taki karakia. Tuia e runga, tuia e raro, tuia e rato, tuia e roho, tuia e ngā kamahi o te, kuninga, kiri roa, whai tia iti, kia u, kia mau, kia ita, homie, hui, tai, kie. Right, so we've got until, I think it's 4 p.m. today, is it? Are we set down until 4 p.m? Right, not wanting to jinx it, but I think that we've got an agenda that actually fits our time slot today, so hopefully we can get through it all without me having to rush you through too much. But that's not licensed to go off strategic topics. I think today's focus, we've got that internal audit plan for some discussion and feedback. We've also got Audit New Zealand's management report and a bit of an update on our standard reports as well as the insurance update. And I want to leave plenty of time for the PX session. And we'll have just a quick break between the public and the PX session. So let's first of all go through the preliminary items. So we've got apologies today from Deputy Mayor O'Leary, Councillor Donovan, Councillor Toiriki and Bruce Robinson. Just to note that Bruce has given me some feedback and I'll attempt to incorporate that throughout the meeting. Thank you, Councillor Ewan. Can you...
Sorry, just an early departure from me as well, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a seconder for that? Thank you. Councillor Maxine, all of those in favour? Against, carried. Confirmation of the agenda. Are there any items of general business to add? No. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. And are there any declarations of interest? No. Great. And no public, no members of the public wanting to present today. So that leads us to item 5 on page 10, and that's confirmation of the minutes of our meeting of the 28th of September. Are there any items of accuracy on that? No? Okay, I'll move that we accept that as a true and correct record. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. All in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Right, Lance, your report on page 12. I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just add to the written report we've taken as read. General election, I think we're all aware of some of the dialogue coming out of Wellington around the new direction of the new government. Repeal of Three Waters legislation is apparently on the cards. The legislation being put into House before Christmas. It's looking increasingly likely that they won't replace the legislation with anything, and I think there's a bit of discussion on that in the workshop this morning. I think that the government will be looking at LTP, draft LTPs that and the narrative that's coming out around something which Mayor Paula highlighted in the last couple of days, that a lot of councils are looking at between 15 and 20% rate increases for the first year, and large rate increases for all the reasons that we know. So we're not alone. There's also potentially some announcement before Christmas around LTPs and whether the time frame for those will be extended or whatever, depending on the Three Waters legislation. So we're just going to have to be nimble and quick around that. I think we're well prepared for that. There was quite a bit of discussion around those matters at the recent Waikato Mayoral Forum as well. The other thing is repeal of RMA reform legislation. That's been promised. That looks like that's likely to happen. A few things that you know about. Climate Emergency Response Fund projects were put on hold if they hadn't already started pretty much immediately by the government. The National Transition Unit for Waters has been told to Tai-ho and not really do anything. And it's interesting that Lila Hare, who's been leading their people side of things, has now left that organisation. She's moved on to another position, another big position outside of the NTU. So it looks like this government's going to move reasonably quickly on things. The other thing is future for local government. Obviously, there's a vote next week with the through Local Government New Zealand around 5 key areas that was in that report put out by Jim Palmer and co. It'll be interesting to see how much traction the consensus position of local government gets with the incoming government, and I think that's probably another area we need to keep our eye on over the next wee while, especially the next 3 months, I would say. Just moving on to 10-year plan. I think that's been well traversed by council. I think it's probably one of the most comprehensive 10-year plans I've been involved in, and one of the most comprehensive journeys that we've been on as a elected wing and as a exec team and staff. Now we have to take the community on that journey as well. It's been quite a bit of narrative around that. I think we will get a lot of feedback. Mayor Paula was on breakfast program, I think it was yesterday, it might have been the day before. And there was a lead story on TV1 News last Friday night about large rate increases right across the country, so which was interesting to see that being a lead story. So it's out there. I think for the organisation, it's we've been getting ourselves prepared. James and the team have got together some good fact sheets, essentially for the community around our rationale and our options around balancing the books and the targeted rates that we're putting out. We've also provided that to staff, because we believe that frontline staff will probably get a lot of questions and feedback and that sort of thing, so that staff, they don't have to be experts in the subject, but they can have fact sheets at hand in libraries and places like that, so they can actually give those to interested people and that sort of thing, so they're not caught short or anything like that. That communication with the community is going to be vitally important over the next 3 or 4 months. Should the proposed 25.5% increase in the first year and beyond, or 18.6 or whatever we land on, end up being the final result, then if we think of this committee, then it will lessen the risk that we were facing, which Standard & Poor's actually highlighted to us with our credit rating and putting us on watch, and it would resolve that issue that they've highlighted to us. So it'll be an interesting time. I think the key thing is that we all keep each other informed about what we're hearing from the community as we work through the process, and obviously once the consultation document goes out, we'll get that formal feedback as well from the community, and we'll get informal feedback, and we will use a number of different medium for that. Just related to 10-year plan internally, as the report says, the Future Fit program, the tranche 1 of the reorganisation is largely completed. The new structure for that 55–60% of council took effect this last Monday. There's been a huge amount of effort put in from Dan's team from HR, working with staff, making sure that people are supported through the whole process. There's quite a bit of effort which people don't realise. There's things like delegations, there's HR systems, there's payroll, there's health and safety systems. There's some practical things like people moving desks and things like that. So my view, the whole thing's gone relatively smoothly. There's always things you can learn from these processes, which we're taking those learnings and we'll apply them to tranche 2, which will commence early to mid-March next year, which is in that consultation period for the 10-year plan. So we've just been cognizant of people's workloads and the uncertainty that reorganisation actually results in. So we've provided resilience training. There's been support for people who are potentially or have left the organisation around CVs, job seeking advice, those sorts of things. With the staff that are here, morale's a key thing for us. Concentrating on the why we're actually looking at reshaping the organisation to be nimble, agile and more efficient. and what our objectives, what our strategies are, and all our outcomes around being better. So the GMs are now working on that story with the people who've been involved in Tranche 1. Obviously, people who are in the areas which we call Tranche 2, they'll face a bit more uncertainty until that March period. But what we've tried to do is carry on highlighting the positives. In the meantime, carried on things like with our staff awards. We've had a leaders program which has had its first graduation recently. We've got an end-of-year function coming up, and we're also highlighting the positives. And there's been some big positives if we look at it, like the inclusive playground at Claudelands that opened last Friday. Apparently it's been full every day, so I think that's a huge positive for council. Another playground opening tomorrow, and there's a whole list of things which we'll be highlighting at our Senior People Leaders Forum next week, just to look backwards to look forward as well about the successes and the things that we've achieved over the last 12 months, which have been immense. The final subject in there was the clams, the golden clams, and I'm looking at Maire's a bit more of an expert on this than me, even though I'm a former biosecurity manager for the Auckland Regional Council. I never dealt with clams. I dealt with all sorts of other funny things, including cane toads escaping out of a plane at Ardmore Airport. So biosecurity is an interesting area, and you can always be surprised with what pops up in a place like New Zealand, and Biosecurity New Zealand working closely with regional councils, iwi, mana whenua hapu, and also local councils around declaring the controlled area, the clams as an unwanted organism, and making sure that there's wash down facilities, there's washing of boats, there's good communications, and that good technical information is provided to our waters teams who are either putting water into the river or taking water out of the river, and making sure that they're getting all the good technical information about how the clams don't cause an issue for our water systems. And my understanding, Mairi, they're not at the moment, and we've got plans in place to make sure that water supply doesn't get interrupted going forward. So I'll leave it there, Madam Chair. Happy to answer any questions.
Question requests here. No questions? Councillor Maxine?
Thanks, Lance. Two questions, one with regard to long-term plan and the other on the clams. In the first instance, really around the long-term plan, there's been an online reaction to the outcomes of the meeting for last week. You talked about putting together some resources for staff to be able to answer community questions, etc. Is there also some opportunity to be able to have some skills development with people around de-escalating some of the potential negative feedback that staff will get from the public?
Yes, it's a really good point. I didn't mention it. So, and Dan's team actually from HR talked about that the other week. Look, I went through the 34% rate increase at the Auckland Regional Council in 2004, and we did that because our staff were getting, challenged and confronted by people who wanted to know more and were angry and things like that. And quite often people just want to offload and that sort of thing. So yes, it's something we're looking at. Obviously, we're only 2 weeks out from Christmas. That will probably be more likely to happen in that buffer period at the end of January, when we have it's a bit of a quieter period before staff get into the whole committee routine cycle and that sort of thing. So the answer is yes. We'll be looking at the key people first. There'll be obviously key managers and then also the key frontline staff who are likely to face those sorts of things. So probably more libraries and your customer services staff and Michelle Kerber's team, rather than the people out on shovels or lawn mowers and things like that. So we'll prioritise those people.
Thank you. Cool. And then the other question was with regard to the clams, but I see we've got a bit in the risk paper a little bit later, so maybe I'll leave that question for there. But I understand that the response around washing boats, etc., is being managed by the regional council. Is that correct? And is there anything that Hamilton City needs to be able to do in terms of getting the messages out to boaties? It's going to be a hot summer and presumably people will want to use the river.
I might get Maury just to comment from a regional council point of view. I haven't been intimately involved.
Yeah, my understanding is that Waikato Regional Council is leading that approach, but there'll always be things that other multiple parties can do to support Waikato Regional Council and what they're doing. So I expect that we'll probably be approached by Waikato Regional Council for assistance at some stage.
And we'll have some signage.
Yeah, so
up
Maria's
and
team's
around.
working with them on that, and I think Mayor Paula brought that up several weeks ago about, where people are launching boats at Phuket and in Central City here and that sort of thing, so.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you. That's all.
Mayor Paula?
Just in terms of going forward with the LTP, because we started with a proposal, we've now landed a draft, which we're working through the communications, and the public are already reacting ahead of having any of the information in front of them in any detail. If, and off the back of that, obviously, no surprises that a 25.5% rates increase is a big hurt to the community at this time of high costs. If the public come back in the new year with an over the renowned, you need to make more cuts, where do you think we sit as an organisation? I mean, obviously, I proposed a lower budget in the first place to spread the impact in the short term. But where would we sit? You're the chief executive. You represent the well-being of the organisation and what's achievable. What risks do we face in the next phase of the LTP in terms of how the public might respond to it? I know it's a hard one.
That's quite a broad question.
It is.
Look, people will naturally look at cuts, and I think as a number of elected members said, that there's two things: you either increase your revenue or you cut your spending, or do a bit of both. And I think we presented a long list of capital and operating activity areas where, or projects where there's options around those. The other option is around, obviously, when you balance the books, and there was, a lot of debate around that in the chamber during that meeting. So, and look, I think council's got options going forward. I think we should just, if we go out with a proposal, my view is we should stick to the plan, and we should then get that formal feedback going forward. Remembering, as we've said, it is only a proposal for consultation, and we are looking for feedback on that. And I think we'll do that in a robust and open-minded way, as we should. So I'm confident that that staff and elected members will listen to the community when we get that feedback. But once you have that feedback, then it's really council's prerogative to take into account what people have said, and whether it's the mood of the whole community or just a few, then there could be particular areas of the budget that you could look at. If you want to make major cuts, then, as I've said before, you'll be looking at levels of service cuts. And obviously those are always challenging, because no one wants to pay more for less. And people have expectations of what councils, and I mean this plural around the country, are going to do for their communities. And obviously there's some core functions, and then there's things outside of what some people might call core, but I always call them the lifeline things come first, like water, roads, rubbish, those sorts of things. And then all your other things, it's horrible to have to prioritise, but they do have to come second to those, what I call lifeline services. So I'm not sure if that's answered your question, but I think we do have some options.
Yeah, so when it comes to that, the public will submit. The staff will stand ready to say, well, no, this compromises critical core services, or yes, this could be potentially delayed, but there is the risks are this and the opportunities are this. But that's where you hope to have the conversation in the new year with the public?
Correct. And I think exactly to your point was that risk appetite discussion we had. I think the last workshop we had at this committee a wee while ago, 6 or 8 weeks ago. I think that is the right way to approach it. What are the risks involved? And that'll go from health and safety and risks right through to people's mental well-being risks and everything in between, because we do a lot of different things for the community under 4 well-beings.
Okay, and another quick question in terms of staff wellbeing, because I'm aware that when we've done lot less ouchy decisions financially in the past, having said that, it's still been a huge burden and a pressure to our financial team, especially our front counter and our rates and financial staff. I know they bear the brunt sometimes of what people are upset about. So we're fully prepared for that in the new year when people see the plan come out, that our staff will be well supported. And I say this from the context, my context is given what we know about how the community feel at the moment, how agitated and anxious and on times aggressive that some of the community response can be. So that's what because I see that directed at elected members, but just want to make sure that our staff are treated with respect and feel safe in their roles.
Yeah, and we'll keep an eye on that, as we always do, and I think we've mentioned previously at this committee and other fora of council that the world's been a bit angry since 2020, and some of our frontline staff have faced that, and Kelvin has been involved with, say, like library staff, just to for training around de-escalation that Councillor Max talked about before. People being resilient and not taking it personally, all those sorts of things. So we will definitely make sure that people have the right support, they have the right training, and they have the right triaging where necessary as well. And that's part of our thing about everyone looking after their mate within council. So if they see someone who is struggling or is getting day after day of angry people and that sort of thing, that does take a toll, and we'll make sure that we look at our rosters and that sort of thing so that people do have a good break and don't get ground down by that.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy if this sits better somewhere else, but it was just, Lance, you mentioned Standard & Poor's and their, I guess, forewarning of a potential downgrading. When we look at the 25.5% or the 18.6% kind of options, are we able to get an understanding of how either option might affect their position around that, and if, say, 25.5 would mean we're on safer ground with that, or if both would be seen as favourable?
Well, I'm going to defer to David, but I think they said a couple of things was around our revenue, but they also talked about our debt profile. So I think if you look at what options we have, then we need to look at both of those parts to it. But David, you might want to make further comment.
You're right, Lance. Certainly reducing the amount of debt the city has is a key focus area. I'd have to say the largest focus area is that costs are outstripping revenue and the gap is widening. So taking on or addressing that issue, whether it's 18 or 25, I can't say whether Standard & Poor's has their preference would be 25, of course, to reduce the gap. Yeah. I'd just put a bit of caution on the sky won't fall if we get downgraded. We are 3 from the top, really, really strong. The financial cost, if you like, or is minimal in terms of increased interest costs. So we'd have to balance that. I think the biggest risk is reputational rather than anything.
Yeah, it's public perception, really.
Yeah, but we're 3rd from the top, so that's strong.
Yeah, thank you.
There aren't any further questions, so the recommendation is that the committee receives the report. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Wilson. All of those in favour? Sorry? if you want to, yes?
I do want to make a couple of comments. I want to say, put on record thanks to Lance and his team for the incredible difficult period of time that they've been through. They're well aware of the risks as our elected members, and I don't think it gives any of our staff or elected members any pleasure. No one's smiling about it to be in this situation. This is one of the toughest situations that we've had financially. So this is no smiling matter. I do want to reassert what Lance is saying, because I think it's kind of, at the moment, there's just a lot of reactionary forces at play, and I don't blame people because it's before Christmas and it looks like a big rates increase, and they, you know, this comes as a shock. We will be putting detail out. We will continue to talk through these issues with the community, and they will have an opportunity to look into the details and have a say on where we should finally land the rates and what we need to do to get there. I'm looking forward to that, but I do want to say thank you very much to staff and to my elected members, because what we achieved, Lance, this year did not happen without a great deal of input from all people. And I know that the councillors have been working with me very closely over many, many months to even deliver that draft proposal that you and I fronted. And, you know, there's been a lot of thought. So this won't make the public feel any better, but I want to say we did turn over lots and lots of rocks and stones to look for savings and efficiencies. We'll continue that process through the consultation period. And, you know, obviously in the new year, some of the things that we were talking about in the workshop this morning around risks with the central government, whether they'll to reform or not to reform, that is the question. We'll know a little bit more about that in the new year, and that will give us some better certainty or some stronger bedrock to go forward on. Thank you.
Any others? Councillor Wilson? No? Okay, so I have a mover and seconder. I'll put it to the vote. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, let's move to the Safety and Wellbeing Report on page 15. I'll welcome Dan Flynn to present that report. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Take the report as read, but just would like to just draw some attention to the work that we're doing in preparedness for our ISO accreditation later next year. Considerable work to be done just to ensure we get around sites and validate the work that we've been doing over the last several years around our safety management system and embedding that. So that's a really important piece of work that the organisation is embarking on. The other thing that I wanted to bring attention to is just the continued work that we're doing regarding our safety system, Aura, just to ensure that it's fit for purpose and continues to meet the needs of our customers and the functionality of that, which is ongoing. The continued focus around our support for the wellbeing of our staff, and for those that attended this morning's workshop would have got a feel for the training and support that we are providing people through change, like the Future Fit Tranche 1, and in preparation for future tranches early in the new year, as Lance alluded to as well. The final thing I just wanted to just quickly talk to was the Safety Governance Committee meeting and the progress that we've achieved throughout 2023, and ensuring that we've got some time set aside to welcome Greg Desley, who is our independent chair of that committee, and to provide Greg an opportunity to talk through some of the successes and our focus for 2024. So I'll park it there and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'll open it up for questions on your report, and then we'll hand over to Greg. Are there any questions from the committee of Dan? Yes, Councillor Van Osten.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Dan, for the work. On page 17, talk about 76 injuries against 48 in the previous period. I wondered, though, how 76 might have compared with the same period in 21 and 22. I mean, it sounds like a large increase on the previous period, but is there another lens that we can see that under?
Yep. Hi. Certainly, probably the comparison, we've only launched Aura in July 22. The previous system was Vault, so it would take some findings to just get those comparisons. But since we've launched Aura, it's been up and running for over 14, 15 months now. We've really been encouraging our people to report, changing the culture. Reporting is a good thing. It's giving us that oversight. So that's why we are encouraged by seeing the number rise. It really paints that picture for us, particularly when it comes to abusive customers, for example. So, you know, if we can get those reports coming in, it really, as well as being proactive in that space, it can really paint that picture and we can support our people.
Okay, great. So there's no disincentive for people to be raising these issues?
No
through this
disincentive,
platform?
quite the opposite.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Cool. Thank you, Chair.
If there aren't any other questions on that report, I'll ask Greg Desley to join us. Welcome, Greg. Did you want to just give us a bit of a rundown on your committee's work and any items that you want to highlight for the committee?
Sure, thanks, Chair. Yes, so just wanted to start off just with some key milestones over the last year. The group meets on a quarterly basis, and it's equated, given the number of people on that committee, to probably about 500 hours focused on due diligence activities around health and safety. That doesn't include any pre-work or post-work that members of the committee might be involved in. We have this year reviewed the original terms of reference. That was mainly around just some movements of committee members, etc., that required that document to be updated. Obviously, during this year, we had the local government elections, and Councillor Wilson has remained a strong advocate, asking lots of questions and being a great contributor from that perspective. We've had cross-organisational involvement from the 3 unions that are involved in the organisation, the PSA, A1s and First. And I think the main milestone, the main achievement, the main benefit of this group is the involvement of members of the workforce, both from a storytelling perspective and a site visits perspective, and getting I guess, stories from the front line, which has been very valuable for everybody involved. Just wanted to quickly cover off on, I guess, the purpose of this group, and it is really about strategic oversight through high-level governance and due diligence, and really the aim is to show that the officers of the organisation are following through on their due diligence obligations, and we try and design the agenda for the meetings to I guess, follow through on that due diligence obligation set out in the legislation. And I guess on that basis, I'll just go through some key points linked to that definition. So thinking about ensuring that officers have continued knowledge of key health and safety aspects. How have we done that? There's been a lot of discussion and a lot of content around critical risk reviews. And I know the organisation of the council has recently purchased a new software package to assist with doing bow tie analysis of critical risks. Our meetings this year have focused in a few areas. Earlier in the year, we talked about the risks associated with working over or near water. There's been a review of the lone worker devices that are used by individuals in that remote and isolated setting. We have looked at psychosocial risk. It's a bit of a term that's sort of bandied around quite a lot now, and so trying to take it from this overarching term and trying to create some practical discussion around what that actually looks like from a risk assessment perspective, talking about understanding the task that people are doing, the social factors like leadership and support that are in place, organisational factors and individual factors. So trying to create a bit of a framework to help people understand what leads to psychosocial risk. There's already been some comment on Aura. We've had a look at that and updates on how that's been working, and the WorkWell system accreditation that the council has been involved with for a while. So in terms of health and safety knowledge, those are sorts of some of the discussions that we've had. Moving into understanding the risk profile of the organisation and some of the controls. And again, there's been a couple of comments already about understanding the extent of aggression and aggressive behaviour that is targeted at council workers. That seems to has increased over the last 3 or 4 years. We have had some focus on plant machinery, and we had an employee come in and talk to us who had been involved in an incident, and I think had an amputated finger, possibly was the outcome there. Again, I've talked about water. We talked and had a visit to the FMG Stadium, talking about large-scale events and management of big groups of people and how they get through that. I think two of the most, I'm not sure what the right word is, but eye-opening maybe presentations was dog control. And again, coming back to the behaviours that workers are having to deal with, that work in that dog control part of the business has been significant, both from the behaviour targeted towards them and the potential for the emotional harm that could cause those people that have been affected by that. And just earlier this week, Waterworld, and I'm sure everybody knows there was a recent event there which had a positive outcome, but hearing the story of how that had to be achieved from the people that responded to that health event, I guess it showed two things. It showed that Waterworld has some outstanding emergency response protocols in place that seem to work, but equally there was some evidence that having experienced that process has impacted the people that were involved. But I think one of the benefits was those people being able to tell that story to senior people around the organisation. Just moving on to resourcing. It's not an area that we sort of specifically mention in the agenda, but it is covered as a regular question from the team when we're talking to the workforce and just asking questions around whether they've got the adequate resources to do the job properly, and so it is something that's quite visible. Information and how we receive information. We did have a meeting earlier this year with a WorkSafe representative who came to talk to us about risk management and how that process was best managed, and certainly the likes of myself as an independent person sometimes provide bits of information that the council can act on, and so that's part of the agenda. Compliance. So really the only activity in the legislative framework around health and safety over the last little while has been the proposed introduction of the plant and structures regulations, which has sort of been on WorkSafe and MBIE's agenda for about 5 years and has never made it to the start line. I guess with the current political climate, it's probably not likely to make it to a start line in the near future. So we'll just keep a watching brief on that piece of regulation that was supposedly coming into place. And I think just start to wrap up, verification is a key piece of due diligence, and regularly, the people on that committee talk about the value of being able to verify how good or maybe not so good things are going from a health and safety perspective by getting stories from people and then going to see certain workplaces and see the issues that people are having to deal with. So certainly, along with reading the likes of the report that's created by the health and safety team, that physical and personal verification is certainly ticking that verification box. Just as I think about things that we might be thinking about for the coming year. As again has been mentioned a few times, there's likely to be some regulatory and legislative reform. It's mentioned in the coalition agreement between National and ACT. So what that looks like, who knows? But again, something to keep an eye on over coming months. Just making sure that we focus on the high-risk activities, and we have targets to go into places like wastewater treatment plants and maybe some of the hazardous work that is carried out in the community. A couple of areas that I think are worth looking at sort of fall into that equity, inclusion, belonging space. And just as an example, if I pick on a subject of dyslexic people that will work for the organisation, you're likely to have the same number of people with dyslexia as you've got people that are left-handed. And so when we think about safety management systems, documentation, written procedures, how are we assuring ourselves that neurodiverse people are able to engage with that information and understand it and use it effectively and feel included and that they belong in the organisation. So I think that's an area to consider. And I guess on a similar theme, when the terms of reference was originally written, there was an inclusion around cultural intelligence, and again, just making sure that areas of different culture are appropriately included in our safety management system. That could be from a literacy perspective or a language perspective, or as an example from a tikanga perspective, some of those things adequately included in what is traditionally a sort of an English-speaking Western type system, and just trying to reflect the multicultural nature of this organisation. Thank you.
Thank you for that thorough update. That's really good. Are there any questions from the committee? No? Look, I would just like to take this opportunity, Greg, to thank you very much. I very much find your reports, all the minutes of your meetings that are included in our safety and wellness report, I find them really valuable because it gives me more of an insight into the culture, safety culture within the organisation, and it's good to hear about the operation, health and safety and operations within the. Yes, thank you. So within the organisation, so it's really good to see that in practice and see some of the, the challenges and frustrations that the organisation, deals with on a day-to-day basis. But actually what I find most encouraging about it is that these site visits that you do are a really good illustration of how health and safety adds value to the organisation, because it seems to me, and I was just having this conversation with Dan this morning, that actually it feels like we've moved from compliance through to sort of integration, and with that comes a really great platform for engagement with our people. And it seems to me what I see coming through in those minutes and in your presentation today is that we're getting some really good engagement from our kaumahi. So, good work, and thank you very much.
Thank you. A lot of the kudos goes to the team that put it all together, and but I think and regularly we get that feedback that the worker engagement piece of the meeting is the best bit, the most valuable bit.
Awesome, thank you. Right, the recommendation on page 15 is that the committee receives the report and recommends that council receives the report. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Southgate. All of those in favour?
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Sorry.
I wouldn't mind speaking on that particular one.
Yes.
Thank you. Look, I guess I want to reflect the fact that over the last year and a bit, I feel I've seen a transformation in the quality and the work that's going on into proactive health and safety. I've been absolutely astounded by how well the team has done, and we are now I'm certainly enjoying hearing from staff at the coalface and their experience. And my takeaway is we have a very wide, diverse activities that council provides. And often, you know, you could be a councillor and not quite realise how many of our staff are put in harm's way each day, whether it's the dog control officers to people using electrical saws, right? And it's great to hear from them. But what's even more important is now health and safety has sort of ingrained this safe culture approach, and people are engaging and reporting incidences. That's the mark of an organisation that has its health and safety strategy up and running and being well managed. So congratulations to the team. I really think there's been incredible improvement. Well done.
Thank you for that insight, Councillor Wilson, and I apologise. I did actually mean to hand over to you after Greg, because I know you've been a fully engaged member on that committee, so thank you for that. Right, so the recommendation is that we receive the report and recommend to Council that they receive the report. Would you like to move that, Councillor Wilson? Yep. And can I have a seconder? Thank you. Oh, sorry, yep, okay. All of those in favour? Aye. Against, carried, thank you. Right, we'll move to the risk report on page 33, and I will invite Nick to the table, thank you.
Yeah, I'll take the report as read. However, I would like to highlight a couple of key points, and they might echo some of the ones that Lance has already raised. There are a variety of updates, including forecasting El Nino conditions for the summer, the newly elected government, and golden clams. Since the time of writing this report, the government's 100-day action plan has been released, which includes repealing both Three Waters and RMA, and staff will continue to monitor the political environment for further details and direction. Following our September workshop, we have now finalised our risk appetite statements for each of our strategic and organisational risks, and these have been included for the first time within both the risk register and as a separate attachment. It's important to note that there are no changes to any of the residual risk levels this quarter, and staff continue to work on further mitigating many of these risks. I can confirm that the risk owners or responsible managers are here if you've got any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll open it up to the committee for questions.
So that's where my question potentially around the golden clams comes in, recognising that there's no risk to our drinking water, but we've got millions of dollars worth of equipment in there, and just concern about whether there is an impact on our infrastructure for that, and if so, then what do we need to do to ensure that it's safe?
I'll just refer that to Fiona Sutton, who's our Head of Operations and Process, so who's been leading the response, especially around operations and maintenance.
Kia ora everybody, through you, Madam Chair. So the approach that we're taking at the moment is we are focusing on monitoring. We have since found some clams, so we sent an executive update to all elected members about that at our Waiora water treatment plant. We are focusing on our monitoring to make sure that we can find exactly where potentially clams have made it to in our process, and we are working on increased maintenance plans to work out and to make the best decisions about how to effectively mitigate and work towards doing the best that we can for this risk, and working closely with experts at MPI to get the right advice to make sure we're doing the right thing.
Is there any expertise that we would need to draw on from either within New Zealand or outside of it, who have already dealt with these issues that we can learn from?
Yes, so we have got some good close ties with some members of MPI who have been leading the technical working group to respond to this, and I have been involved in the technical working group, involved in meetings with experts from around the globe, Ireland, and all around the place to get an understanding and learn the knowledge about this mollusk.
Yeah, and I guess then there's the money question. We've got the adequate resources to be able to respond accordingly, and might there be any support from MPI to assist with any of that ramped up monitoring?
So we are reaching out to MPI, but we are still quantifying the exact costs of any increased monitoring and maintenance. And as soon as we have that detail, then we will be funneling that through the right channels to make sure that we're appropriately communicating those risks and opportunities.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Just said on page 46 on the register, and looking at the very highs, of course, and just in terms of the very high risk on political changes negatively impacting strategic direction. Could I have a little bit more of an understanding of what you're referring to there? Being a politician, you may be including us, but you may also be including central government.
Through the chair, it's a very broad risk, and it of course does cover central government, it covers local government, it covers our relationships across all of those parties, and of course, as we have discussed earlier in today's agenda, that risk is quite high at the moment because of the nature of the uncertainty with some of the changes that have been signalled and the time of exactly when they will impact us and how they will impact us. So, Mayor Paula, that risk has been consistently rated at that level. I guess that's the nature of the highly political environment that council operates in terms of our other relationships and stakeholders.
Thank you. And then if you look at page 59, strategic risk number 7, it says inherent risk rating, extreme, almost certain, catastrophic. Can someone talk me through what we need to do to better manage that risk? It's got the inherent risk rating. Am I reading that right? Page 59, Andrew? Failure to deliver our work programs?
Yeah, so Chris Allen spoke to that this morning in the workshop, and I think the environment is changing now. So we're starting to see a more hungry market, and yes, quite a change. And so I suspect we'll want to update this risk profile at the next review opportunity.
Okay. In terms of, I'm just trying to find where it was. In terms of us talking about the risk, cybersecurity risk, the risk to data, the risk to critical information falling down because of, somebody infiltrating our data or our systems, whatever, and all of that stuff that is too much information for me. But in terms of looking for we've got a really good staff member involved, and so that gives me some confidence. But in terms of managing it going forward, given the huge costs and given what you see we're facing now in our budget, our ability to just do so much when it's been indicated that we need to do so much, maybe somebody, chief executive or someone, can talk to what efforts we might make in the new year to share services, share learnings with other councils and therefore gain some efficiencies. We did talk about this yesterday with Waikato District Council, who were keen to look at shared services models for those kind of things. Because it
might be best to park that question until the cyber report in PX, and we can address it to the cyber manager.
Yeah, no, look, I'm relaxed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll leave it to you to remember.
Well,
Don't rely on me.
Hopefully I will.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. This question might be for Mairi. It was around the long-range weather forecast impacts and just talking about the potential impacts on our water supply. And the fact that we're seeing lower water levels in Lake Taupō, can I just understand, is that because there's less snow because of warmer weather already, or what kind are there? Is this more of a blip or a longer term trend that we're seeing more of?
Through the chair, it is it is common to see variability in a natural water system and a natural catchment. So the lower level is really reflective of, I guess, the level of rain and the level of water that's making its way to Lake Taupo. So it is something that we are likely to see more often and more frequent in terms of those extreme levels being reached. But that's something that we are planning for. We do have our low river contingency interim measure in place, and there is planning underway for what we might need to do in the future to respond to that increasing risk.
Okay, thank you.
Bruce Robinson. So this is at page 38, or really 39, paragraph 64. He's interested why there's been a delay developing a detailed plan to plug the gaps analysis in the crisis and emergency management function. This delay might be quite reasonable, and I'm sure it is, but I wonder if there are particular and significant gaps we should be worried that are currently unaddressed. Could they affect significantly our ability to respond?
So I'll respond to that. So the answer is workload, FutureFit, and the whole program. It's has been delayed, but we do know there's nothing significant in the gaps that would cause us for concern. So anytime we would think that, we would jump on it straight away in terms of prioritisation of workloads.
Okay, thank you. Look, if there aren't any further questions from the committee, I've got a couple of questions myself. Now, when I'm looking at page 47, the risk appetite, particularly with regards to failure to provide safe environment for our community, that doesn't reflect the risk appetite statement, which I think is a different rating. So is this yet to be updated, or am I missing something there?
I am just scrolling to the presentation version. Yes, so I believe it was, there's some issues with our risk ratings from the table to the presentation. I know that also climate change has the wrong risk rating or risk appetite setting. It needs to be reviewed, and we can recirculate that.
Okay, and can you just remind me where we're at with those risk appetite statements? So we had a great workshop on those, and so are you wanting the committee to endorse those, or did we do that last meeting?
I believe we did that at the September meeting.
Right, okay, thank you. And I just wanted to highlight on page 88, I think it's 88. Yeah, so, I mean, there are a couple of risks on page 88 and 89 where, in fact, our current risk is below our appetite. And so what's the action out of that? What do we do with this information now? We've done this really good work assessing where we want our risk appetite to be and assessing where our risk is. What are the next steps?
Yeah, so the way that we'll use this is specifically for those ones where our appetite is lower than where or is higher than where our current risk rating is. That shows that we need to invest less in that space in terms of maybe other areas where there's quite a significant gap. And so what we'll be doing with this is then taking it to LTP discussions, which I know it's already been part of, and working with our GMs to say where do we need to focus our resources, and it's not on the risks that we're kind of doing better than already.
Great, that's what I wanted to hear. And my last question with regards to risk appetite is again on page 88, and this is I think it's, is it climate, which one is this? I'm just, page 88. Anyway, my notes from the workshop were that we were more towards the open rather than the adverse rating there. But that doesn't seem to have changed in these.
Yeah, I believe we were still in that kind of neutral receptive, probably more towards that receptive end. And I think it's just the reporting that's shown the neutral side rather than kind of the breadth in which we actually are having that appetite.
Okay, right. Okay, look, if there aren't any further questions, I'll just go back to the recommendation. So the recommendation is that the committee receives the report and recommends that council receive the report. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Nelson, and thank you, Nick. All of those in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Right, so we'll move on to item 9, the internal audit update on page 102, and I'll welcome Tracy to present that in the first instance. Okay, welcome, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just introduce this report and then hand you straight over, given my voice, to KPMG to explain what we've been doing over the last time since the last committee and what we're going to be doing going forward. So, Benita, can I give it to you to explain? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tracy. And through you, Chair, thanks for the opportunity to present our plan. I'll take the plan as read, but I would like to just make a few points. It highlights the focus areas for FY24, but you'll see that we've also given you an indication of potential future areas of coverage for FY25 and 26, given that we obviously have a certain amount of capacity to do reviews in a particular year. So we thought it'll be good to give you that indication that risks have been considered, but not everything can be looked at in the 1 year. Do a quick recap of the approach. So we've looked at the historical coverage, the last 3 years of internal audit activity that you've had, obviously considered your risk profile that has recently been updated, the current strategic priorities, what's top of mind for management, and they're looking for assurance, comfort in terms of the control environment in respect to those strategic priority areas. After we've considered all of that, we proposed a plan. It has gone through a robust discussion with the ELT in terms of prioritization and sequencing the reviews, and what you've got in front of that is after it's gone through that validation exercise with management. We just want to point out that as risks and priorities change, which is inevitable, we'll continue to monitor the relevance of this plan, and if there are any changes, come back to the committee for further endorsement and review. But for now, that's the plan that we've got, and happy to take any feedback or questions.
And you're looking for feedback from the committee on that 24 plan? Okay. Are there any questions or feedback from committee members? No. Look, Bruce Robinson has some feedback. He asks, when did we last have a fraud prevention risk maturity assessment? I wonder if it would be helpful. Fraud prevention is not on the year program per se, and I note there are good planned work into core systems. Perhaps a substitute is a planned fraud prevention element in the scope of the planned core system work. Are you able to answer that, Tracy?
There's no reason why we can't. Yeah, we can absolutely take that into consideration and think about what that would actually practically look like. I guess we have done a lot of different types of fraud, types of internal audits. So individually in different types of areas, for example, in petty cash or cash handling or the payroll or those types of things. So yeah, happy to take that offline with Bruce to see what he was kind of meaning and see if we can pop that into the work program. That's not a problem.
Okay, great. I'll leave that for you to follow
Thank
up
you.
with Bruce. And I just had a few questions. Firstly, does the budget allow for the 4 review items that have been proposed there?
Yes.
Yes, great. I just note from the Audit New Zealand comments around our work in progress and the complicated manual process. I just wonder whether a further internal audit review might help in that process, and perhaps you could just remind the committee of what work's been done in that area already.
So quite a substantial amount since I've been in this role. We've done a couple of internal pieces of work around process and whatnot, because as you can imagine, this area goes between quite a few different teams. So we have put in place already some of those outputs that we've got from those reviews. And I know Andrew and his team are also have kicked off a couple of things specifically around the PMO office and some other areas in his team specifically in his new role as well. So I'm not sure, Andrew, if there's anything else to add to that, but it is something that we talk about quite often. I talk about it at ELT every month. I bring it up every month as a discussion.
But I guess my question is around independent external help or review there.
I guess my
than
personal
internal
opinion
work.
is we know what's wrong. We just have to figure out internally how to fix it. And like I say, because it's spread over so many different areas, we kind of are fixing it at different points, and it sort of does get better. If I want to talk about the internal, what you have to remember is this is big value, this is big dollars. I know that just, sitting with one person alone now, there's, a substantial amount to come off, but it's just, ticking those final boxes. So we have some big projects and some big items that will obviously, cut down that WIP balance quite significantly. But when you're talking about roundabouts and wastewater treatment plants and those sorts of things, of course the WIP will go higher. But, also, absolutely, if that's something that this committee would like us to do, we can certainly put it on as a review.
I just wonder whether an independent eye might actually, help find different solutions to this problem. You say you know what the problems are, and I'm sure you do, but it's about looking at the solutions to that problem and drawing from others' experience. It's something that has been raised by Audit New Zealand, year after year, and it is, as you say, a big value item. I don't know what the best timing for that might be, but I would be interested to hear from KPMG as to what their thoughts are on that.
I think as Tracy has said, obviously, Chair, that there's quite a few reviews on the plan for FY 24, but again, it's that back to that prioritisation of that's where you feel the highest value and the highest risk mitigation is then.
Maybe through the chair I can help a little bit. As part of our our Future Fit program to simplify what we do, we actually do have some external people involved in Andrew's group, which is the largest part of our work in progress, having a look at how we operate and what ways we can improve. Work in progress would fall as part of that and flow through to the organisational wide treatment. So it's not that nothing's happening from an external perspective, but you're on point. Once we've gone through that process, and I think that we do need to then review specifically around work in progress externally, so this committee can get assurance that we're operating as best as possible.
Okay. And look, can I just confirm what the process is here? My reading of the report is that this will be finalised in February once feedback from SLT and the scoped engagement, and then so it'll come for final approval at the March SHRAC meeting, will it? Yeah. So perhaps the feedback from myself and Bruce could be considered between now and then, and it'll come back to the committee for final review in March. But that will effectively give us 3 months to do a year's worth of work. I understand that some of that work is underway, but I would just reiterate that more than ever, it will be really important to set agreed dates and milestones for each of these reviews so that we can get them coming through to the committee in a consistent way rather than all at once, although we might not be able to avoid that in our next couple of meetings given the concertina timeframes. But yeah, I would encourage KPMG and the HCC team to sit down and really think about what are realistic timeframes for these reviews and work back from SHRAC committee dates so that we can have them coming through consistently through to the committee in a timely manner. No other questions on that report? I'll just check my notes. Yep, no, that's it. Right, so the recommendation is on page 102. Right, the recommendation is that the committee receives the report. Now, thank you, and a seconder. Thank you, Mayor Paula. No debate on that. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. So we'll move to the organisation improvement report at page 115 of the pack. And
this report is the full report for the year. So we do this once a year where we bring all of our recommendations through from the various audits that we have. So normally at the committees you only see the high risk ones, and then at this time of year we bring you the full list to update you with where we're at with each of those recommendations. So you'll see there's quite a few that are just waiting ready to be re-audited, some of them that have been delayed and not started for various reasons, and some of them are in progress. So with that I'll take questions.
okay, are there any questions from the committee? No, I'll just double check. Yeah, I do have one query from Bruce on page 120. So the IBIS Breeze, I did raise some questions on this last time and note that we are delayed in some key controls around the application and assumptions. Given the delay, what assurance can we have that assumptions are reasonable and have been applied, I think that's into the modelling correctly, at the risk of being more precisely imprecise. So I think he's wanting to know, what controls have we got in this LTP process to guard against this?
So the model was used last week for the 2 days for the LTP. So we are still working with the vendor, obviously, on getting that in the system itself, and they are working with us to do that. So we have a manual process, obviously, at the moment that overrides that. And you would have seen this morning when we presented the risk profiles on inflation and interest. It had the sensitivity analysis, which we obviously already calculate, so we use that as well when we do our checks and balances as we're going through and bringing that model into chamber, and then when we're actually doing the modelling itself. So we have that override, I guess, manually. So ideally, we'd want the system to do it for us, and that's still where we're heading and working with the team on.
Okay, thank you. Right, the recommendation is that the committee receives the report. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. No debate. All of those in favour, say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. And you again, Tracy. Hopefully you're not losing your voice yet. Item 11, page 125, and that's the Audit New Zealand report. I'll invite Audit New Zealand to the table as well.
Thank you, Chair. So what you're seeing today is our final management report for the annual report for the year ending 30th of June 2023. So there are a few new open matters that got added to this report to this process from Audit New Zealand doing this annual report. There also were a few items that got taken off, so they weren't an issue any longer. So you'll see there's some quite comprehensive answers in the report around what our council response are to those items. So if anyone's got any particular questions on the actual management report and management's responses to those answers. Sorry.
Are there any questions from the committee? No. I do have a query at page 137 of the Audit New Zealand, or of the pack, but in the Audit New Zealand management letter. It does refer to a number of minor errors that led to increased hours. I just wanted to know, were these more than normal? And if you could give the committee a bit more context on that, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I won't say it's more than normal. We expect that there will be some adjustments as you go through the audit process. It is quite a complex thing with a lot of interlinks between the different sections, from financial statements to the notes, from the notes to the DIA measures, making sure that if there's one update, it flows through the document. So I won't say it's more than normal. It is just to highlight that there is things that can be changed or improved on, but it's not more than normal.
And I guess that leads me to my second question. What debrief process has taken place? Have we taken lessons from last year's process, and what, what's to be improved next year?
Yes, so as part of the fee setting, we did agree to an open book exercise. So we are busy with analysing all the actual costs. We are also sending that to our ELT so that they look at it from a whole sector perspective to see what that we're all answering the same way, and that if somebody's over auditing or under auditing, that it's compared to the other councils as well, so that we know where the right level is. So definitely we are looking at setting up a meeting with him, because we did initially agree to that.
Okay. And Tracy, any learnings from you?
So we chat. The auditors are based with us on the same floor as us, and we have regular meetings with them during the process as well. And we were quite clear from a staffing perspective around some of our expectations on delivery of information and things like that. I think one of the two key things that worked well again this time was their access into our system, so they could look a lot of the information up themselves. And we have what we call an audit dashboard, so they load in their queries and what they need into that dashboard, so each of the team members can go in and fill that out rather than emails going here, there and everywhere. So those two pieces of technology, I guess, if you like, and changes of the way we worked really well this time round.
Yeah. And if there aren't any further questions on the management report, I do have another couple of questions around the LTP audit. So I had expected that the engagement and fee letter for the LTP would come to the committee. What's happened there?
Yes, thanks for that question. So as you're aware, there's a change in government, so we don't know what's in, what's out at the moment. So it's very hard to set your fee without really having clear expectations. So I've prepared the engagement letter. At the moment, there's a hold on that from Audit New Zealand. So we can't issue that until the discussions has been completed. The Office of the Auditor General is sending out a letter. Once that is released, we can release our engagement letter. So we have been talking to the team. So it's not that because we haven't issued the letter that we're not working with management to work on a plan to make sure that we can deliver on the audits for that, and that our timelines are in line.
Okay, so that's news to me right now. So how long is that pause going to be? Is OAG going to wait until there's clarity on all of these various reforms, or how does that work?
So we are waiting on instructions. So the plan was to have it out this week. I know that they are talking with DIA and everybody else, so Unfortunately, that's happening in Wellington, so I don't really know.
Right. So are you going to start the audit?
So the plan is to start in end of January. So that is the agreed times that we will have. So yes, we will start the audit, and we're working with management on the timelines. So the plan is to have it ready to go to hot review in the middle of March, with adoption of the consultation document by 30 March.
Okay, so you're to start the audit the end of January. So what is the proposed process for getting the engagement and fee letter signed off?
So we have a council meeting on the 14th of December. So at the moment it's tabled to be a late report going into that particular council meeting. If we don't manage to receive any information by then,
it was tabled to be a late report for this meeting.
Yes, it was. And as you just heard, so obviously waiting for the Office of the Auditor General. So slightly, I mean, I guess it's out of both of our hands right now. So it wasn't ideal. And yeah, at the moment, the next committee or council meeting is the 14th of December. And then after that, I don't think there's one until February. But as you know, we had already planned to start the audit process around the 15th of January anyway.
So that's going to become a problem if that isn't ready for council's meeting on the 14th of December. Yeah, I'm surprised that I haven't heard about this prior to now, Clarence. Given we do encourage that sort of open communication, and this could become a problem for the audit if that's not available. At the workshop this morning, we spoke about the key assumptions for the LTP, and that there's a lot of uncertainty around the reform coming out of the local government. But as it stands, we need to work within the law that currently stands, and it was my understanding from that workshop that that's Audit New Zealand's stance as well with regards to the LTP, that we work with current legislation. So I'm surprised that the engagement letter's been paused. Can you give me some more context on that?
Unfortunately, I can't. There's a hold on it, and I can't issue it because I think what they're looking at is because the government have that 100-day plan, and I don't know if they have better information than what we have, and I just know that there's a hold on issuing it until we have more certainty, unfortunately.
Right. Okay. I see a question from Mayor Southgate.
Sorry, just a follow-on question for that. You'd be aware, I guess, that some councils are pushing back their development of their LTP till the very last opportunity they have. That's going to cause some pressure on audit, surely. They're saying there was no need to rush. We have been quite, as Karen noted, we've been quite forward in our work and got it done in good time, as we were informed by staff to get it to you on time to be processed for the next stage of LTP. You're saying that your best guess is that we will be able to get through that.
That's correct.
Before we go into the next consultation phase of the LTP with certainty. So.
Yeah. Yes. Our planning is to get the order done so that you can go and consult on the 30th of March.
Cool. And given that getting audit sign off at the other end was an issue last time because of the amount of work you were under with the country, does this this creep and delay on councils forming their plans create an issue later in the year in terms of sign off?
So for the councils that make an active decision to push out the LTP, they will be impacted. So they'll have to say either the annual report or the LTP will be audited. You won't be able to do both if they push it out by 3 months or 6 months or 12 months. And
so what happens if they can't get it audited then? They get their LTP as...
So if it's a LTP, then get prioritised and that will be audited. If they then adopt the normal annual report after the statutory deadline.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, just wanted to understand, because, you hear different messages up and down the country, and we've pushed forward. This governance board has been told that, we must get our complicated work done in good time for audit.
Yep. So I can give you guarantees that we are well resourced. So we have enough people to do the LTP audit as well as the annual report, given if it sticks to the timeframes that we've agreed. If there's delays in getting information or being pushed, then obviously it's like anything else. You can't do too many things at the same time.
No, so you'll be prioritising councils like ours that have done their work.
Definitely.
I was going to say that's the whole reason why Mayor Paula is I booked this in a very long time ago, and it was very much around, already know the pressures given who they audit and how they audit and the timing of what they're auditing. Not only is there's obviously long-term plans for councils, there's also universities having their year ends, there's us then starting our annual reports and those sorts of things, and as you've witnessed over the last few years, it all comes crashing in as soon as someone becomes late. Hence why I booked ours in at the time I did, working backwards from June to allow for the consultation period and the delays and the timing of all of that thing as well.
So I understand that. I guess in the context of Local Government Inc., what the pressures further down will be, because you will have at least 30 councils that will not have touched their LTP before Christmas, coming later into the process. It's just a fact.
Mm-hmm. To hear that you are fully resourced, because I think we'll need to be agile throughout this process of, in an environment of really high uncertainty. Unfortunate on the timing of the engagement letter and fee letter, but let's hope that's not a sign of more to come. As I say, I'm pleased to hear you are fully resourced this year. If there aren't any further questions, I'll move to the staff recommendation, which is that the committee receives the report.
If I can just make a comment, sorry, just further to what Mayor Paula had raised and probably your comment. I think it's really important for us from an audit risk perspective as well that we do push on with the audit program and the plans in January that we have. I think as a Tier 1 council, as a major metro with a credit rating, etc., it's highly important that we maintain a high level of reputation and financial prudence and I guess good practices. So notwithstanding uncertainty, notwithstanding all the flux that Clarence and Tracy referred to, I think it would be poor practice for us to delay the audit, to push things back. I think it's better for us to maintain that very high standard because I think, again, it just reflects on our, as a major council, with all our finances and financial considerations, having that audit process is a key part of that. So I think it's unfortunate the letter's been delayed, but nonetheless, I think good practice is to do what we're doing and to push on and resource that audit process.
Thank you, and that's probably quite a good segue into the next report, which is the annual credit rating. But I'll just finish with the recommendation that the committee receives the report. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Wilson, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. No debate on that. All of those in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Right, we'll move to, thank you, Clarence. We'll move to the next report, the last one for you, Tracy. Hopefully your voice is holding up.
Thank you.
So page 160.
Thank you. This is the Standard & Poor's credit rating report that we get once a year. So we've obviously talked about this quite a bit already today with Lance's report and during the risk audit report as well, so the risk report as well. I just did want to touch on the process for this and the timing of it. So what happens when we get Standard & Poor's is they come to New Zealand and interview quite a few of the staff and the mayor and the CE around certain aspects of our finances and our balance sheet and our program going forward. They then take that away and work on what all of those pieces of information are. We get told, we have a meeting usually in the morning around 10 o'clock with them, remembering this is an international firm. We then review anything factually, and I think it's about 4 hours later it gets released to the public. As soon as that's released, we then obviously alert and let elected members and things know. So I just wanted to reiterate that as soon as we know anything, you know anything, because it's a pretty tight turnaround time. So I just wanted to make sure elected members were comfortable with we are telling you as fast as we are alerted to that information. But it is, yeah, pretty tight. So with that, Chair, I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? I guess, actually, no, that question's already been answered. Thank you, and I don't think Bruce has got anything there, so that's fine. Right, the recommendation is that the committee receives the report. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Wilson. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, Tracy. We'll now go to item 13 on page 171, and that's the committee self-review. I'll hand over to you, David.
Yeah, I'll just take the report as read. Just happy to take questions.
I guess we should just highlight that there was a survey done this year, and thank you, Mish, for organising that. It at least gives me some useful information, and as with any good survey, we hope to actually get to do something with that information.
Feedback is a gift.
Yeah. Okay, are there any questions on that report? No, I'll move to the recommendation, which is that the committee receives the report, thanks myself for my work, and notes any areas of improvement or additional training for the committee members. Perhaps I won't move that one.
Noting perhaps also thanks to the other independent member of this committee, with your leave.
Yes. Yes.
So we can add
Good
that
call.
in, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know, are there any improvements?
No feedback on that?
No, probably just a tiny bit of feedback is that I really appreciate this is such an important committee, so we've struggled, just to put it on the radar, we've struggled occasionally with attendance and quorum. We've done something about that, but we have to encourage our wider elected members to take an interest in the business of this committee because it's so critical. The other point I might make is that, and even the workshops have a lot of value, but attendance and so forth has been lower than I would like to see. So that's something to work on in the new year, I believe. And I really enjoy the opportunities like we had at Te Kiti Aranui, where we get, we're not encumbered by the formality of the meeting agenda per se, but we can actually explore some topics, which is why you can get into a meeting like today and generally, take a lot of the understanding is read from the report. So just keep doing that more iterative conversation, I believe, is very valuable. So thank you very much, and I hope that you and Bruce get a good holiday.
Thank you. And thank you for raising that, Mayor Paula. I think, sometimes there's the inclination to think that Audit Risk Committee is boring, but it's far from it. We talk about some really key issues facing this organisation, and I like to think that those discussions add some real value, so and are of interest to all elected members. So thank you for raising that, Mayor Paula. Any other discussion? No. Can I have a mover for that? Thank you, and a seconder. Thank you. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, we'll go to the general insurance update, and I'll invite Julia to the table. We're on page 176.
Thank you. I've also got Matthew Wilson here. today from Aon to join us. So we'll take the report as read, but just highlight some key points. So the insurance market is under significant pressure at the moment following the weather events both locally and globally. This renewal has been particularly challenging for which Aon can attest to, but both in terms of premium and capacity terms and conditions. Our premiums have increased 25% overall on our expiring values, also driven by increasing values as well on our assets. Aon would consider this quite a good result in the market, though it still hurts us on our bottom line. Our lead insurer for material damage has imposed higher deductibles on us this year, so both in terms of for all of our claims, but also a specific flood excess, which is the market moving away from carrying those lower losses that are increasing and becoming more frequent on the policy. And just the last comment is that we continue to work alongside Aon to ensure that our policy is well managed, valued correctly, and we're purchasing what we need, fit for purpose and justified by loss modelling. So that is all, and if any questions?
Thank you for that. Are there any questions from the committee? No?
Just looking at the global pressures and things, have we got any intelligence or insight into what the future of the insurance industry is looking like from Council's perspective in the next few years? We've had those big weather events, we've had pressures on global reinsurance, you know, in terms of the big, because let's face it, so is the rest of the globe having these big weather events and disasters. And we know the costs going up. What do we see over the next 3 years in terms of insurance and Council's ability to properly insure itself?
I'll give that one to you, Matthew.
Thank you, if I may, through the chair. It is going to remain challenging. We do not believe that insurance is going to disappear. There will need to be a piece of work done, and this isn't a specific question for Hamilton, this is a sector question, and Julia and the team have done a lot of hard work in this space already. Asset bases, generating an appetite in terms of the difference between risk appetite and risk tolerance. The fact that the insurers have imposed a $100,000 flood deductible is trying to move the insurance from being an operational expense, if that makes sense, to being more of a more severe event type response. What we actually saw in London when we went to London to market the infrastructure is an increase in capacity. There are now more insurers coming into the market because the market is cyclical. So we've been 5-7 years ago, we were in a low end of the market, premiums are relatively cheap. Now that that's doing this, you are finding more entities with capital are looking at what the return on investment is. Because those premiums are coming up, some of them are now considering we'll go into that space because we can get a better return. That's a little early to tell completely at the moment where that's going, but we don't feel there is any issue with the availability of insurance. It then becomes the affordability of insurance and whether insurance is your favoured risk transfer mechanism or are there other financial vehicles that could or couldn't be used. And that loops back to the appetite and tolerance question. So part of the work that we will be doing with all councils is, in the early part of the new year, is having those conversations about appetite and tolerance, and then seeing where it goes to from there. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it gives us a sense of confidence with cover, doesn't it, if there's more players in the market.
Right, so the recommendation is that the committee receives the report and notes the renewal of the council's general insurances. Can I have a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor Wilson, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. All of those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Right, we'll move to page 184, item 15, and that's the draft work plan. I'll let you go and take us through that, Mish. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. The draft work plan is just that, it's a draft. It's a living document that the committee will, the Chair and the Deputy Chair will work through. The standing report items are the same as we have had this year, and the remainder are based on the annual, semi-annual reviews that we do, and we've made some assumptions about when LTP audit information will be available as well as your annual report. So I'll take any questions.
Okay, any questions from the committee? Bruce Robinson has one. He says that I appreciate we do an annual refresh of our risk settings. Can I suggest we ensure we check on the alignment of our risks with the strategic objectives in the LTP? This may impact the timing of the workshop, because I see that that annual risk review is set down for March. However, the LTP wouldn't be adopted until June, although I guess in March we have the key information for that. But it is a good point that Bruce raises, that obviously after each LTP we should have a good look at our risk register and in light of the new objective set within the LTP. Have you considered that timing in the work plan?
I think by the time we get to March, the draft documents will be ready for consultation. I'd be fairly surprised if we ended up with the council making a significant departure. But that being said, we can always assess that February, March next year, and look to shift it if we think it's more appropriate.
I think it's a bit of a balancing act, because it's been some time since we reviewed the risks. So, you know, if there is some certainty around the LTP in March, then I'd suggest we hold it at that. But if there is any further uncertainty coming out of government reform and what have you, then we might need to reassess that at the time. I just had a couple of amendments. So in June we would normally have tax review. It doesn't seem to be there. Is there a reason for that? Perhaps if maybe you just take these items for consideration. The other is we will need to, in March, we'll need to add the final internal audit plan for review by this committee, since it was just a draft plan we had today. And also, I've got here, if I can read my own writing, in March, the BCP management report, which was delayed from December. I was expecting to see that in the March work plan.
Yep, we can add those on.
Yeah, and then once we have the internal audit plan finalised, we'll need to then schedule, I'd like to see them scheduled into the work plan so that we can have some certainty as to when we'll see those.
Sure.
Okay, if there aren't any further questions, the recommendation is that we receive the report and we adopt the draft work plan for the committee, and that we note that the wider schedule of reports for the committee, council and other committees will be updated and provided to this committee in 2024. So given that that's to be updated, I think we can leave that recommendation as it is and just take those points from myself and Bruce into consideration. So I'm happy to move that recommendation. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Van Osten. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. So the next report is yours as well, Mish. On page 188, that's item 16, the compliance report. Do you want to take us through that?
Yes, I'll take the report as read. The only point that I would like to make is that we have had a notifiable privacy breach since the report has been written, and I'd like to discuss that with the committee and PX under the legal risk report.
Yep. Thank you. Are there any questions on that report? No? Okay, the recommendation is that the committee receive the report. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Wilson. All of those in favour say aye. Against, carried. That leads us to the resolution to exclude public on page. Thank you, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Van Alsten. All of those in favour? Against, carried. Right, we'll just have a 5-minute comfort break. Well, let's make it 7 minutes. We'll come back at